And yeah, we're good whenever we're ready to go.
Well, let's go. Before JC creeped Craig out with Nigelson, before Jimmy hoofed a ball and raised a trophy with Craig with the Gold Cup, before Dubs dropped a pun, before Sharms and Craig hosted Sportsnet's soccer show, and before Craig and I went to Cancun and hung out with Jorge smoking weed, there was a friendship created from a mascot and a Premier League goalkeeper. JC, do you want to put the picture up? Here is Richard Moss and Craig Forrest.
You got that picture? They are. Look at them.
There they are, looking like father and son, to be honest.
Look at that. Richard, why'd you dye your hair dark?
And we are so happy to have Richard Moss from the Suffolk Crunch. Suffolk. Sorry, dude. You know I'm Canadian. You're me a
suffocating break. It, Dan.
Yes, I am. But welcome to Footy Prime. We've got Craig here. We got Jimmy, JC, myself, Wonger, and we have Rich
Cruncher.
How do you go by?
You can call me Rich. You can call me Rich.
Okay, so we got Rich.
Craig can call me Cruncher if he wants.
Yeah, we gotta be close to be able to do that.
Welcome, Rich, to Footy Prime. We're excited to have you and to hear how you guys, first of all, met each other and then reestablished this friendship. So, can you explain from your point of view that first meeting with that image that we just saw?
That picture was about, I think that was when you used to have a sort of a fan get together, Craig. I think that was on a Sunday. It was probably about 1988.
Wow.
I was about 10. That red coat, I remember losing that. We used to go down, my mum and dad and my sister, we used to know someone in Portsmouth down at HMS Douglas on the where the base was. And I remember going in a pub and I left that red coat there and I was devastated, Craig. But I think looking back now, it was probably a blessing that I lost it.
You had the same hairdo as I did. Did you have frosted tips back then?
No, that was my natural color.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Long time ago.
Yeah. So what do you think here? The season, it's been incredible the last few years for Ipswich Town. It really has been. And now we find ourselves in the Premier League, 7 games in. What is your thoughts on the early parts of the season?
Well, obviously when we got promoted, we were all delighted. You probably see the scenes when we beat Huddersfield at Portman Road and we were all on the pitch and the town was it was absolutely crazy. And then reality hits. You're thinking, it was a short space of time. I know that was sort of the start of May, but it soon comes around and then we're thinking, yeah, we need some players. We've obviously signed, I think, 12 players, Craig, so far.
Wow.
And there'll probably be more, I would have thought, in January. They'll make some more additions. But look, going into the Premier League, obviously I remember when we got promoted back in 91, 92. And then that was the inaugural Premier League, wasn't it, when you played? And then we obviously got promoted under George Burley in 2000. And now it's massively changed. I mean, the one probably takeaway I've taken from it so far is the physicality of players. They're massive. They're tall, but they're just athletes, all of them. And that's been a little bit so far where we've been a little bit short. But listen, we've signed some really good players, obviously, who were probably top players in the Championship. And it's that jump, isn't it? We can all say we want to sign experienced Premier League players, but we all know that we're not in that place at the minute. We can't afford the fees. We can't afford the wages. So it's going to be an uphill struggle all season, I think. If we finish 17th, I think it'll be McKenna's greatest achievement. We had back-to-back promotions, but I think if we stay in the Premier League, that will eclipse the last two seasons.
What is the biggest difference you see between the divisions, Premier League to the Championship or even the League One?
Yeah, one of them, like I say, physicality, probably the speed, and it's probably Saturday against West Ham. You make a mistake and the ball's in the back of your net. We didn't play terrible on Saturday, Yeah, we come away losing the game 4-1, and you think West Ham had struggled up to sort of that stage. They hadn't won a home game. We go in there probably thinking we could get something, but then when you come away from it and you lost 4-1, and then you look at West Ham's forward line, you look at what Bowen, Paqueta, Kudos, Antonio, these are top class players, and it's just look, it's hard, and we've just got to somehow get a win very, very soon. We've obviously got 2 weeks off now, but the longer it goes where you don't win a game, it's going to be harder. But we got Everton, Leicester, the next 2 home games, and then we've got 2 away, Brentford and Spurs. I think we've really got to be winning both of them, Craig, if we're gonna be sort of anywhere, sort of hopefully staying up. But we just got to enjoy it as fans. I think look where we were as a football club when Kieran come in, and obviously we went down from the Championship, and we've spent 4 years in League One. You just have to enjoy it, but it's easy saying that, isn't it? Because we've been used to being winning the last 2 seasons. We've only lost 10 games, I think, and we've got 7 games already, and we haven't won. So it's just difficult.
It is, but at the same time, I mean, I'm watching this side, and they're still trying to attack. I thought they were really positive against West Ham, even after they conceded that early goal. And then at 3-1, they had a really good chance, West Ham, and the keeper made a really, really good save. And I thought that could have been a game changer. And then it sort of switched. But overall, Liverpool lost, Man City lost, and West Ham away. Those aren't easy games anyway. And the other ones have been very competitive. So I've been sort of quietly confident with Ipswich picking up points somewhere.
It's just staying competitive for me. Sooner or later you hope you get them breaks. Another thing I've sort of noticed as well, when you were saying there we had a good chance we could have been back in the game. When you get on top in the Premier League, I think you have to score in them spells, because I think if I'm being honest as a fan, we haven't got as good a player as these other teams. So when you do get on top and when you do have chances, I think you have to score. But you look at the games that we've drawn. I mean, away at Southampton, probably people saying that was one we could have won. We went to Brighton, got a good draw. Fulham, and then I don't know if you guys watched the Aston Villa game. At home, they were obviously got Bayern Munich on the Wednesday in that week coming. Maybe they took their eyes a little bit on that, but we played very well there, that game. But I think as well, we have to play at our maximum every single game to get something. I think if them levels just drop a little bit, I think with the quality of these other teams, I think we could struggle. And I do think we'll struggle away from home. What I've seen at home, I think we'd be okay because we've got like 30,000. We've got the fans behind us. But when you're on the road, I think we might need to be a little bit more sort of pragmatic and not play so open, because with some of these teams, I know we've got Brentford and Tottenham away coming up in the next 4 games before there's another break. And you look at Brentford scored 5 at the weekend. Tottenham, I think they could take any team apart. So look, we might take a few hidings along the way, but you just got to remain positive all the way through. You're going to take your defeats, but you've just got to take positives out of them games and just hope that them home games, I think, is going to be massive. They're going to be the key if we do stay in the division. I think your home form's going to be where you're going to take, I'd say, the majority of your points. Because I looked yesterday at the teams who got relegated last year. Sheffield United, Burnley, Luton, they only won 6 away games between them. So there you go.
Yeah. When you look at your squad right now.
There's 3. Go ahead, Jimmy.
When you look at your squad right now, and if the club had money, is there a position that you would like to fill in that would help the team?
Well, we spent 104 million, Jimmy, in the summer, which, I mean, our transfer record stood from last time we were in the Premier League. We signed Matteo Serrini, a goalkeeper. That was 4.5 million. That stood for 20 years, but we broke it this window. Is there a position I'd probably centre midfield? I mean, we signed Calvin Phillips, who obviously struggled. We was at City and at West Ham. He's come in. Sam Morsey, right, brilliant captain, but he's 33 now, and it's hard to criticise players when they've done so well. These players for the last 2 years, and they've got us where they are. But sometimes you've got to be. There is, like, I think Saturday's game. I think there was only 4 players who played last season in the Championship in the team. So he sort of ripped that apart. I would say centre midfield, Jimmy. If you're looking in January to sign somebody, you could say another striker, but then you hope Liam Delap stays fit, because he's
scoring goals.
Yeah, he's been brilliant so far. He's got 4 in 7. But centre midfield, I would say you probably could add someone there. But yeah, Sam Morsey's been an incredible captain. We've had some really good captains down the years, and he's probably one of the best captains I've seen. Probably Matt Holland before him was probably one of the best. I wouldn't quite say David Linnigan, Craig, when you were playing, was one of the best captains we've ever had. But I think Matt Holland was great. Sam Morsey's been great. But we need to be in a position, Jimmy, in January. Hopefully we're in touch with, if we're in the bottom three, we're not that too many points off sort of safety, because it might be hard then to attract players. You know, these certain players might think, I don't really fancy a relegation scrap, because they might be back in the Championship next year. So, yeah, centre midfield and possibly another striker, I think.
Rich, the supporters, with the Suffolk Crunch, you must have your finger on the pulse of how they're feeling and the shock. You sound very philosophical about it. Was the entire community, are you like a voice of sanity, or are people losing their shite a little bit?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because obviously now, look, obviously when Craig and when Jimmy played, social media wasn't about. You know, you played your game on a Saturday. You used to have the Greenland come out, didn't you, Craig, on a Saturday? The paper in Ipswich, you'd get all the local football, you get the town report, but then you'd probably just go home or you go down the pub and you talk to your mates. Whereas now, it's all out there. It's instant on social media. And it's been, look, I think after the West Ham game, for me, it was a little bit of a reality check where it had been really good so far. And that's the first, look, we went to Man City. Everyone loses there. We lost to Liverpool, played quite well for 45 minutes. But I think Saturday there was I'm not saying it was, we were probably optimistic going into that game, because looking at the form, and West Ham had struggled. But then you look at, like I said there, look at the players West Ham had got. And you've got to have a bit of realism, I think, that what we're up against. But I don't think everybody's realistic as far as I'm concerned, because everyone will have, look, it's football. Everyone's got different opinions. But it's, for me this season, you just have to enjoy it. But then on the flip side, if you're struggling and you're losing and you're not winning games, which you've been used to the last two seasons, people will criticise, and they're entitled to their opinion. But I think there has to be a line that you don't really want to cross. But I think social media, like sometimes, look, we're all probably on there and we see some stuff people post and you think, what are you thinking? Because we all get frustrated, I know that. But it's always, for me, like I do a video on a Sunday, I'll go for a walk, and that's after sort of, you go home from the game on a Saturday and then you wake up the next day. It's like, it's that instant thing. After a defeat, a lot of people straight on social media, he had a bad game, oh, he was rubbish. Whereas the next day, it's a little bit more, you've thought about it and you probably thought, yeah, he didn't play that bad. But it is social media, and it's instant, it's at your fingertips, and it's probably a bad thing sometimes. Just leave your phone alone after a game, Craig. If you've just got hammered or you haven't played well, just chill out, because it's only football at the end of the day. We all want to win, I know that, but you just have to enjoy it, because we were in the doldrums as a football club. Even if we go down this season, we're going to be in a better space than we ever were under the previous regime. So you have to look at things, you just have to be a bit measured, I think.
I think so too. I mean, especially when I'm watching that game against West Ham, I'm just like, you know, a couple of years ago, this is something that I would have never thought would have happened for years to come.
We were playing Cambridge on that date, Craig. We were playing Cambridge United at home. So you need to realise where we've come from. But football doesn't stand still, does it?
No,
that's right. And it's a world that is very difficult to live in. I mean, when we're talking about literally oil states are owning clubs, like in Ipswich being the size that they are, they're incredible how they punched above their weight for decades, really.
Even now, when you look at where we've come, we've been promoted. But you even look at Southampton and Leicester, they still had that parachute money. They've still got Premier League players in their squads, which we haven't. So we're up against it. Whatever happens this season, we're going to be up against it. But you just hope that you can just remain positive. And if you can, next game Everton at home, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you go into that game, if you can get a win, it just lifts everybody. But the longer it goes and you don't win, and we could all be positive and say, yeah, we played very well today, but we lost. You need to win games of football. We all know that, don't we?
What's the atmosphere been like at Portman Road for the home games? It looks fantastic. Electric. I'd say that is going to be, we've got to use ourselves 12 as a 12th man, Craig, I think, this season, and sort of help these. Look, West Ham
That's the first time Saturday I'd ever been to the London Stadium. Atmosphere, dire, not a football stadium. You know, it's money wise. West Ham have got that. Obviously, they've got that stadium. They've got it quite cheap. They've got a 99-year lease on it, and they're making loads of money every game. But as a fan, and you played at Upton Park, and you know what Upton Park's like, it was nothing like that. Whereas Portman Road, you still got that old style feel of a stadium because, yeah, it's had a lick of paint, and it's been brought up back to life, I'd say, because it was sort of falling apart in certain places. But I don't think you can beat them old style stadiums that you go to. You're close to the pitch. And yeah, the atmosphere it's been brilliant in the 3 home games so far, and I think it will remain that way through the rest of the season. You know, we're selling out every game, and you think only a few years ago it was half empty. It was like a ghost town down there, and you're probably questioning yourself why you're going to the games. But now everyone's positive. Everyone wants to go. You can't get tickets. Tickets are all sold out. They'd probably build a new stand. The Cobbold stand will probably go eventually, but hopefully we can stay in the Premier League because we've not really got a really good reputation with building stands, have we, Craig? Because we obviously built the Pioneer stand, and then that team broke up, and then we built the North stand and the Sir Alf Ramsey, which was the Churchman's. Then we got relegated to the back to it was the Championship then. But yeah, look, it is positive at the minute, and you can't wait to go there on a Saturday.
You must be thinking that your first win's going to come against Everton, your next home match. Looking at the schedule ahead, because you do have some tough matches, but that's one you're probably thinking this could be.
I think you'd look at it, Jimmy. You'd probably think it's a game you could win, but you still have to go into that game and think Everton have got some good players. I know they've struggled, but they picked up the last 2 or 3 games. They've got a good manager, Sean Dyche, and Everton are a massive football club. But I do think you're probably right there because there's going to be certain games, especially at home. Everton, Leicester City, the next 2 home games. You've got to take, I think, minimum of 4 out of them if you're going to have any chance. I'd say you probably need to be winning probably both them home games because, like I said, if we're going to struggle away from home, like I said, them relegated teams last season have only won 6 away games between them. You're probably going to need to win 8 to 9 games at home out of your 19, which is probably that's a big ask, Craig. When you think that's nearly half your home games that you're going to have to win. But if you think, for me, it's all about your performance because if you keep them levels up that you had against Villa, I think you'll beat a lot of teams. If you dip a little bit, you'll get found out and you'll lose games. But that win has to come soon because like you're 7 games in and then you've got another 4 games coming up and then you've got another international break. If you go in then after 11 games and you haven't won a game, you're thinking it's going to be a really, really long winter ahead.
Rich, I saw your promo for the Suffolk Crunch Twitter, and it read, "Not every week you get invited on a podcast by one of your all-time favorite ITFC players."
Exactly.
That's amazing. What made Craig? I want to talk about Craig. What made him one of your all-time favorite players?
He was at the club a long time, which helped. Frank
longevity.
Frank Gallop was also up there. He was one of my favourites. I remember Frank, Craig. I remember you used to go down. You could go down where the players, you come run out onto the pitch to warm up. Back in the days in the 80s when I was going, you could just literally go down there with your autograph book. Players would come off. And this is like they've just done the warm up. They're probably 15 minutes away from playing the game. They'd sign your autograph book. Nowadays, you can't get anywhere near them, can you? Blimey, they come off the coach. They've got them big headphones on. They don't want to talk to anyone. They might. Our players, I'd say, are really good. Like after a game, they'll take their time. They'll chat to you. They're like normal people. But a lot of people are sort of, I think nowadays footballers, well, they're massive superstars, aren't they? They're like their own brand. A lot of them, they'll have their Instagram accounts. They'll have their clothing. Yeah, Craig was a great goalkeeper. You know, he was part of a team that got promoted under John Lyall. And I've had Craig on a Talking Towers on before. I think you've been on maybe 3 times, Craig. And I've said to you before, that team of 91-92 still doesn't get the credit that it should have done because that was a great season. We played some great football. And look, we scored a lot of goals and we played Liverpool that year, didn't we, in the FA Cup? Drew at Portman Road and then should have beaten them at Anfield. I still remember that goal from Jan Mulby where he's moved that ball probably about 5 yards closer to the goal. I'm not sure how that's happened, but He's a legend. Craig Forrest is a legend. He is a legend.
Spent a lot of time there, Warren. I basically grew up there, showing up as a 16-year-old. Grew up in Ipswich, and I always felt and was sort of driven into us. And Frank Yallop was great because, he was a few years older than me, but obviously very good friends. And, the connection to community and how important that was at Ipswich Town and all the supporters groups. We went all over Suffolk and in the areas going to different supporters groups. And I feel that sort of come back over the last few years, that they've signed players and talked to them about that importance to have that connection with the community, because it is very important to clubs like Ipswich Town, isn't it? Yeah,
they lost that. When Marcus Evans was there, Craig, it all disappeared. And you're thinking, even like in the schools, Norwich were coming into our sort of areas and taking players, and you're thinking, this isn't right. But since they've come out, and to be fair to him, Paul Lambert came to town, obviously ex-Norwich, and he wasn't very good. But the one thing he got back was the community. That was a good thing that he done. And he made them first little footsteps, and now they're massive in the schools, the Ipswich Town Foundation. Dan Palfrey runs that. He does great work in the community, and they're doing dementia, coffee mornings at the ground. It's brilliant. A lot of this is down to Mark Ashton, Craig. I think you should talk about him, the CEO. I don't know if you've listened to it. If you haven't, there's a podcast with Mark Ashton on. I think it's called Men in Blazers, and he's on there, and it's 55 minutes, and you've got to listen to it. He has done such an amazing job since he's come to town. He had loads of work to do. When he walked in that stadium, he must have had a list as long as his arm that stuff was falling apart. The team on the pitch wasn't very good, but within, I think he's nearly been there 3 years. It's been a major turnaround, and you've got to be. Ipswich Town have always been in the community, haven't they? At Suffolk, you've got to have that feel. You've got to have that connection, and that's what we've got at the minute, and we've had over these last 2.5 years under McKenna. Everyone's pushing in the same direction, and if you're doing that, last season, even in the Championship, we didn't have the best team. Leeds had a better team than us. Leeds, Leicester, Southampton, they all had better players than us, but I don't think they had a better team spirit than we did. And we've got Kieran McKenna. He's our superpower at the minute, and long may he stay at Ipswich, because there was obviously rumours of him leaving in the summer. Brighton, I think Man U, Chelsea were after him. He was the best signing we made this summer, him getting him on that longer contract. Will he be at Town long term? I doubt it, because if he keeps us up, like I said there at the start, that'll be a greater achievement for me than back-to-back promotions. And I don't think it'll really affect him much, even if we got relegated, Craig, because if you look at Vincent Kompany at Burnley. They got relegated, and now he's at Bayern Munich.
Yeah, right. Sean Dyche, he couldn't get a move anywhere. Now he's, we're still talking about Sean Dyche. Maybe he's just not sexy enough.
Well, Sean Dyche and sexy. I don't think we ever put that in the same sentence, do we?
Yeah, and his style of play isn't exactly always sexy either.
Not really. It's effective.
What was the surprise though when Kieran McKenna stayed? Did it surprise you a little bit?
I was a little bit worried, if I'm honest, because you think he obviously come from Man United, and it's only human nature. And if you listen, he'd done an interview when he'd signed his new contract. I think he was a bit torn, and he obviously had to probably speak to his family, because you are the flavour of the month. We all know what football management's like. 1 minute you're flavour of the month, you have a few bad results, you're out the door. I think he could lose every single game at Ipswich this season and he wouldn't get sacked in my eyes, because he's done that much. But yeah, I was a bit worried that he'd leave. I thought he might go. Did I think he'd go back to Man United? I didn't think he'd go there, because I think it's probably bit too soon, even now, because obviously Ten Hag's still talking about if he's going to stay or go, and we don't know what's happening with him. Even now, McKenna, he needs to have a season in the Premier League at least. Brighton was probably the one club, Craig, that I was probably worried about that he might go to, because they've done so well. But yeah, look, we're all delighted that he's stayed, and he's going to give us the best opportunity to stay in this league. Because if he had left, I think it'd have been really, really hard whoever come in. I wanted Kieran in that dugout the first game against Liverpool, because he'd done the hard work to get us here, and he deserved it. And look, he's still learning, because he's young. He's still a pretty young sort of manager. I know he's been in coaching since he was 22, because he obviously had an injury at Spurs and he had to retire. But in management wise, he's still learning like the team are every single game in the Premier League, and it's hopefully he can keep improving with the team, and then we can do enough to just about look. I'll take 17th now. If you offer me 17th right now, snap your hands off. That'd be success.
Yeah, he's been absolutely amazing. And from my point of view, I think it's absolutely brilliant in modern day football to be able to hold on to somebody like McKenna, who has done incredibly well. And with our history of managers at Ipswich Town, he just fits right in there with the likes of all the greats of Bobby Robson, Alf Ramsey. I mean, he really has been that good.
I'd like to think, if I always look at Brighton as a little bit of a blueprint for what Town can do, because Brighton were in the doldrums. Brighton didn't have a stadium. They got a new stadium. Right. And it doesn't matter to me who Brighton manager is. They had Chris Hughton, I think they had Potter, De Zerbi, and then they've got the guy now. To me, it doesn't matter who the manager is, because they've got a philosophy how they play. They've got their transfer policy under their chairman, Tony Bloom. He uses a lot of analytics, and it just sort of fits. A coach comes in and he fits in seamlessly. Now, when McKenna leaves, because I'm not going to say if he leaves, because he will leave eventually, you just hope that there's someone can fit into his role and not change too much, just maybe tinker a few things, but not come in totally and rip everything up. And then you've got to start again, haven't you? If you keep, I think you'll probably find this in a lot of clubs now. It'll just be, they're not called managers, they're coaches, aren't they? They come in, a lot of them, they might not have they'll have someone, the transfers, and the manager doesn't get a lot of sort of say. Maybe he's given them players and he's got to work with them. Whereas in the old days, Craig, it's like when Bobby Robson was at Town. I think he was there 14 years and he signed 13 players. That was all he signed. He worked with what he's got. He had a good academy. That's another thing I think. Hopefully, he'll come back at Town. We can get some young players coming through. But then it's hard now. Where I look at it, it's hard now because we're in the Premier League and we've got a bit of money. Mm-hmm. You've got to have that patience, haven't you, to develop them players. And then if you've got that money, you can sign a ready-made player. It's easy sometimes, and you might have a few good players, and they might not make the grade in the Premier League. If you go back to the Championship, your players might get a little bit more of a chance, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, and the development of players is changed somewhat. Where in years past, Ipswich have sold their young players on before they even had a first team appearance, because they're getting good money for these young players. And back in the day, it wasn't that great. So it was like you could develop them, at least get a few years out of them and play for several years before moving on somewhere else. And you just don't see that quite as much as you used to through the development system. And Ipswich was at the top.
I know it's a little bit different, but we've obviously signed Liam Delap. So he come from City. So he was at City's academy for quite a few years, but we've signed him. Man City have got a buyback clause. They've also got a sell-on clause. So we all know what happens in football. If he has a really, really good season at Town this season, say he scores 15 goals in the Premier League, there's a good possibility, as far as I'm concerned, Man City could buy him back. I think we signed him for 15 million, maybe going to 20. I'm not sure what the buyback is, but it wouldn't be a lot. It might be 30 million. They could sign him back for 30 million and then sell him on. He might not play again for Man City, but that's how it works. It's a little bit... But I suppose when you're a club of Town size, at the minute, we are... If you want a certain player like that and City say, right, we're going to put a clause... We can't really say no, can we? Because we're in no position to say that. Whereas you want that player, but then you might only have him a season. He goes back to City and they sell him for another 10, 15 million. But that's just the way of the world.
Yeah, and in the meantime, they get him off the books and it doesn't count for money spent and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because you see in June there was, I think it was Cameron Archer, the lad who's at Southampton now. I think he was at Sheffield United last year. He'd gone from Villa. Villa had the buyback. If they got relegated, they had to take him back. I think they signed him for 15 million. This was in June because it all works out at the end of June on their financial figures. Literally within a week, they sold him on to Southampton. Just so it sort of fitted because they needed that money. So they're sort of cooking the books, aren't they? A little bit. It's well, look, it's complicated, I suppose. Just juggling.
Yeah, it's
Rich,
not a problem.
there's been all this celebrity attachment. Ryan Reynolds at Wrexham, Rob McElhenney at Wrexham, Tom Brady, I think at Birmingham. What has? I guess there's two questions. The biggest one is, do you have to be an Ed Sheeran fan now? And what has that added to kind of the supporters at Ipswich? Has it changed anything, having that huge cachet of, one of the top balladeers of the world?
It's great. Look, as a fan looking at it, you'll see him on his Instagram and he'll be doing a concert somewhere on the other side of the world. And he's got the town shirt on. I know, look, he's sponsored us. He's obviously sponsored us. I think this is the third season. He said he'd sponsor us in League One, sponsors us in the Championship. He said this is his last year because obviously it gets more expensive. It gets more expensive for the sponsorship. And we're probably thinking if we can stay in the Premier League, we can get a bit more money. But look, it's brilliant. And you see him, I mean, last season, I don't know if you see it when the town got promoted, he took the players out. I think they went to Halesworth, Craig. Literally out in the middle of nowhere, they were in this pub. And he's in there, and look, everything nowadays, like I say, it's on social media. He's on there singing. The weirdest thing for me was, guys, he was in the toilet with his guitar with all the town players. Now, I'm wondering what the hell he was doing in the toilet singing. But look, it's great. It is great. It's great publicity for town. He's a world-renowned superstar, and he's one of the greatest acts. Look, I think he'll probably. Will he play a concert at Portman Road? Probably. He's played in town before. You're probably thinking now we've got a brand new pitch. That's probably the next step where we're going in the summer. I remember back in the 90s, Craig, I think when you were down there, I think we had Brian Adams was there.
That's
played
right.
at Portman Road. I see the Red Hot Chili Peppers there in early 2000s.
Yeah.
Elton John's been there.
So
I would
there back in the day.
Yeah. So I would think that Ed will play a concert there, and it's town are in the limelight. We were so long, no one cared about Ipswich. No one cared about us. We were the longest serving club in the Championship. We were in there for 17 years, but we were doing nothing, and in the end we got relegated. So to have Ed Sheeran attached to us.
Well, you called him Ed Rich. I think you're pretty familiar.
Well,
have you met him? Have you met him?
No, I did. Well, we met him at Charlton when we were in League One. Do you remember the game, Craig, when we were 4-2 up in injury time and they scored 2 goals and it was 4-4? We were all devastated that day, and we went round afterwards. A few of my mates, we were hanging about around near where the players' bit were. We see Jim Davison. Do you know the comedian? Is anyone familiar with him? He was there because I think he's a big director at Charlton. We just stood there, literally just minding our own business. All these minders come walking along. There was Ed Sheeran just about to get into his big people carrier. There's about 6 of us. We had a picture. My youngest Archie, he said he was literally walking off, and he says to him, "Can I have a picture, Ed?" And he says, "Yeah, sure." Ed Sheeran takes my son's phone, takes about 5 selfies of him, and then he's gone into the night, into the car, and gone. That's brilliant. So I can call him Ed. So I sort of
Good old Eddie.
Do you have any idea what that deal is worth to Ipswich Town?
I don't know. He's got a stake now. He's a part owner now. Craig.
Yeah, I remember him being the last deal he had.
That was
gave him ownership
just
of some
before the season started. I think he's got 1.5%. The best thing was I think the week leading up to the Liverpool game, there was a Premier League advert, and it was Ed Sheeran driving a tractor, and it got on the stereo playing "The Boys Are Back in Town." Brilliant.
I saw that. I thought that was brilliant. It's nice to have some star power.
Exactly.
Well, you've also got the always comical Will Ferrell, who is a huge town fan.
I don't think I've seen him at town.
He's he came out. There was an interview in 2015 where he said he's a town supporter, and there's pictures of him with the kid on. So that's a thing too.
Not seen him at the ground yet. Maybe he'll be there for the next game against Everton.
Get there, William, Mr. Farrell. Come on, where you
Ed
been?
Ed Sheeran was even going to watch Town when we were in League One. I think it was called the it might have been the Papa John's Trophy then, Craig. It could have been Johnston's Paint. It changed every year. He was at one of them games. There was about 3,000 fans there, and he was in his box. His box is just behind where I sit, guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
We always look there. And everyone's waving at him.
Does he make every home game?
No, he's obviously got a concert. I think his tour might have ended now. So will he be there against Everton? Probably. He used to have a squad number 17. He was on the programme. Number 17, Ed Sheeran. Still don't know what he offers, Craig. Don't know if he's a centre midfielder. I've actually seen him with, I think when they, the pink kit, this one here, which I think he helped design, there was a little video when he was playing football. He's awful at football. He's terrible. He's a good singer at football. Terrible. No skills.
I want to thank you for jumping on with us and spending the last half hour with us, Rich.
What time is it? What time is it down there, guys?
Oh, it's 9:30 in the morning.
What's the weather report?
Oh, sunny and 15 degrees centigrade.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We're doing all right. How about you?
It's probably about 13. It's been a bit rainy, and it's October and winter is on the way. Dark nights. I remember one time when I had Craig on, I was talking to you. You had snow outside your window, didn't you?
What's that?
I think that was the first time we had you on, Craig. It was in COVID. It was one Sunday night. We had Craig Forrest on, and we said to you, "How long can you?" You said, I'll stay as long as you want." We'd done 2 hours. I think it was midnight here in the UK by the time we'd finished. I think you said there was snow outside your window.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We don't get snow in the UK. We don't have winters, I don't think, over here like we used to.
Well, you're a lucky man. We we appreciate you jumping on. Where can people find you so they know where to listen to more Richard Moss?
The Suffolk Crunch on YouTube. The Suffolk Crunch on, I call it Twitter. Everyone calls it X. I'm on TikTok as well, Craig, now. Got to get down with the kids.
Look at you.
Yeah, but TikTok's just wastes your time because you'll sit there on your phone and before you know it, you've been scrolling through it for 45 minutes and you're thinking you could have made probably more use of your day.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Yeah, you go down that rabbit hole.
Anyway, where did you get that picture from? You've been searching on my Twitter and you found it, haven't you? Or did you have it, Craig?
Yeah, I've had that forever. Yeah.
I think I had one that day with Romeo Zondervan, Ian Cranston, and one of my favourite players before I go, Dalian Atkinson. You know, God rest his soul. He was one of my favourite players, other than Craig, back in the late 80s, wasn't it? You played in the game when he got the hat trick against Middlesbrough.
I'm not sure I actually played in that game, but he was in the U team with us. We had a really good U team, actually.
What a player!
Yeah, what a player!
Brilliant. Anyway, pleasure being on. If you want me on again, I'm available.
We'll holler. Just so you know, at the beginning of the season, one of the things we all had to make things we're hoping not to see, and one of those things was that the 3 promoted teams are not also relegated teams again. And we're all cheering right now for Ipswich Town. So we're with you and all of your supporters.
You're not cheering for Southampton and Leicester then?
Well, maybe Jimmy is.
Yeah,
I'm cheering for Saints.
Here.
Norwich are doing quite well, Jimmy.
They're not bad.
They're doing well this season. I think they're 24 games unbeaten now at home. I was reading it the weekend when they won.
Yeah, they are. They had another good result.
Yeah,
They'll be thereabouts.
Yeah,
they always are.
It's always great, though, when the rivalry between Norwich and Ipswich, and when they're in the same division and you have those 2 games that you play during the regular season is a special game. It's not great, Craig, because we're not beating them since 2009, and their fans love to remind us. Yeah, I know. Jimmy reminds me.
It'd be great. Listen, it would be great if we're both in the Premier League. That would be brilliant for the local area. But hopefully they'll stay down and we'll stay up anyway.
Well, we might pass you.
You could well do. We'll wait and see. Anyway, thanks for having us on.
Thanks so much. That's
Cheers.
Richard Moss, Suffolk Crunch. Find him on YouTube, Twitter, and now TikTok. Thanks so much, Rich.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. Must be nice talking about your old haunts, Gregor.
Oh, it's brilliant. Like I said, I'm just still excited. Maybe after 20, 25 games, if they haven't won a game, I might start changing my mind. But
well, we didn't do a debrief on Saturday. Was that a weird feeling seeing your 2 kind of favorite clubs that you played at playing against each other and feeling a bit torn?
Totally. Very strange. I couldn't get around it. I just could not get myself to cheer for one. So I just cheered for both. And those 2 early goals I thought made it good for from a spectacle point of view. And Ipswich weren't far off. They didn't play that badly. I think the scoreline flattered West Ham a little bit. And they had their chances, and they're positive and having a go. And I like that. But I think, like Cruncher was talking about, they're just sort of trying to, get that balance where they can defend and not give up sloppy goals, and as well as create some opportunities down the other end. So I'm sure he's tussling with that in his mind about how he approaches games, but I don't think it's going to change an awful lot because it's in his DNA, the manager.
The other thing is too, you just called him Cruncher. He didn't introduce himself as Cruncher. I would have liked to use that nickname of his. That's a great nickname. That's like a cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon nickname.
Yeah,
the Cruncher.
Yeah, the Suffolk Crunch. Good
That's
podcast.
fantastic.
Good podcast. Yeah, he's a terrific guy. There's a few guys that were young like that I've managed to stay in touch with over the years, and mascots and ball boys and things at Ipswich Town. It's pretty special. I think it's something you don't get at some of the bigger clubs.
I was thinking about, he was talking about the new pitch. What was the pitch at Portman Road like when you played? Was it farmy? Was it manure on it, or was it brilliant?
What do you mean farmy? Where they got
like pasture, pastoral.
Well, years ago, in the mid 80s and before that, Ipswich had probably the best pitch in all of football in England. I think it was voted the best pitch on several occasions. And then when we played, it got worse. I think they let the groundsman go, and then it went sideways, and there was too much pressure on it. We had some bad winters as well, and man, oh man, it was a cow pasture at times. Yeah. You couldn't play it. You couldn't try to play it. Couldn't play out of the back, Jimmy. I wouldn't be rolling the ball out to you at fullback position. You'd be bobbling around all over the place, right?
Get it up when you played on those bobbly pitches. But I think what helps now too is a lot of the pitches they're all hybrids now.
Yeah. Right.
So they're mixed with a little bit of artificial turf and grass, and then it just allows them to be a little bit more durable.
What was the worst pitch you played on, Jimmy? That sticks out where like affected your game. There was your team's game.
There was a few, especially when you were in the FA Cup or the League Cup. You would travel to some grounds where you'd be just like, this. We're not playing football today. This is just going to be a battle. It's going to be long ball, direct. One of them was probably, I think, Rotherham at the time.
Spell Rotherham. Where's that?
Rotherham.
Is it an R?
In Sheffield.
Okay. Rotherham.
And the pitch was like on an angle. And Stacks would know this. A lot of pitches were on angles in the UK. They weren't flat. They were on these angles. So you felt like you were kicking up the first half, and then in the second half, it was on the way down. So when you're trying to play a striker, and you'd have to look at the pitch, figure out how much pace you're going to put on the ball.
Oh, fuck. Hey, Craigor, what about you? Worst pitch you played on other than Ipswich when they let it go?
Well, there was several in the winter that weren't great. I found it more difficult than going into international and going to play on Bermuda grass in Central America. Different bounce, fluffy, sits up sometimes, ball, you get underneath it, hard to pass, very dry.
Soggy.
Yeah.
Remember when it rained, how soggy it would be.
Oh my God, that's right.
Because it's thicker, right? It holds more moisture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, were the balls collecting moisture at that time? You know how they?
We didn't play in the 40s.
No, but come on, the ball now are they're almost. I mean, you can do anything with them, and they're not affected by the weather or anything like that. Going down to play in Central America, there's all kinds of challenges. I just wondering if the ball was one of them.
Yeah, no, it was in the 40s, and the balls were. Yeah, they were fine. There was nothing wrong with them. Some were a little bit livelier than others.
Yeah.
The old miter ball was like a cannonball trying to kick it. And then the Tango, the Adidas Tango was lively as hell. If you remember in the 80s, even the 86 World Cup, that ball was just flying all over the place. But they seem to ball technology, valve technology that's in play now. The balls are incredibly consistent.
Yeah, I think when we played with that miter ball, you could control it a lot better. And then they started going to that different technology. The ball was lighter, but then it was lively. So you'd ping a ball and it'd be shifting in the air, and you're trying to control it. And then I think they've really kind of mastered it now, where it doesn't swerve as much when you're pinging it, but if you hit at certain angles, then you can knuckle it.
As a goalkeeper, I like the miter ball, not from striking it point of view, because it would be like hitting a snooker ball, but the pace of the ball coming at you, it did not shift much at all.
Yeah.
Was a miter ball a brand or a concept? Oh, it was a brand.
Miter, yeah.
Yeah, they dominated back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, probably, the miter ball. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, I think that's our show for today.
That was great.
That was good.
Yeah, I love talking. We're gonna have to get Jimmy, someone from over at on that side, on the Norfolk or the Forrest side, to come on and talk about how things are. Because Forrest, God, we talked about them. Match of the week last week with Chelsea. Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see how that fan base and supporters are feeling about their chances.
Yeah, they've done well.
How are you feeling about Forrest this year?
Really good. Yeah, really good. I like the way that they're playing. I like the squad that they put together. Obviously, it was difficult the last couple of years because we were just hovering above that relegation zone. I think because we had so many new players that came in, there was a big transition for everybody. But I like the way that the manager's playing at the moment. The team seems a lot more settled than what it did over the last couple of years, and they're playing good football.
I'm surprised a little bit, Jimmy, with Chris Wood, at how well he is actually doing. I didn't see him as being, as productive. I really didn't. And then when they lost Johnson, I thought they would fill that spot perhaps, and he has actually run with it.
Yeah. But I think it's also the service as well, right? Hudson Odoi, you got Alanga, you got Gibbs White in the middle of the park. So you got a lot of players now that are giving him that service that he needs. And he is a fox in the box. Like he gets in these great little areas that the wide players or even the attacking midfielders can find him. And he's a great finisher.
I think that's what Ipswich will be hoping that they can do, is stay in the division, develop a little bit. Some of these players, keep a hold of them. I didn't know about that buyback for Delap. That's a typical situation that small clubs find themselves in when you're doing deals that you can't say no to. But if he fills the net, then Man City could literally buy him back and then resell him or use him. But I would imagine they would resell him. But
yeah, which would be great for Ipswich, because you think, if they bought him for 15, 20, they sell him for 30, and then if Man City ends up selling him on, they're going to have a sell-on clause in that as well.
Maybe
they'll make more money off him.
Oh, the business of football is really interesting to me, with all this loaning and like selling off contracts and all that kind of stuff. And it's also interesting because what piece of that do players get when you're bought that way? Or, is there a percentage that they don't even see because it's going straight to the clubs, right? And that's what's always where you're like, I think we need a business guy on too. That would be very interesting.
A lot of that's done in your personal agreement.
Yeah.
When you do
so you need a good agent. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, yeah. Some clubs won't put it in there. They won't allow you to have the player get a percentage, and other clubs will allow the player to have a small percentage and getting sold on. But it depends with the agent and with the club, how they negotiate and what they're putting together.
Yeah. And when you sign for a club like Ipswich, you're generally not going to take a pay cut when you get relegated. That's the problem, and that's why the parachute payment does help out with the clubs when they do get relegated, because nobody's going to sign. You're going to be in a pretty bad position if you're a player that signs, if you're going to get your wages cut if you're relegated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Other big day today, we didn't talk about TFC at all. So congratulations, Footy Prime. Congratulations, listeners of Footy Prime. You don't have to hear us go on about TFC today. So there you go. Listen, subscribe, share, comment. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms. Footy Prime, Footy_Prime at Twitter. We are footyprime.com. Come look at our stuff, our merch, and our booze. Let's do that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Cheers for listening. Keep buying newspapers. There's a throwback.
The Ipswich Star.
There you go.
Fantastic.
All right.